great idea, you guys! Slick shoes! Slick shoes? Are you crazy?
There used to be a way to stick it to the man. It was called rock and roll. Guess what? Oh, no. The man ruined that, too, with a little thing called MTV!
Don't talk to me about rock and roll. I'm out there in the clubs and on the streets, and I'm living it. I am rock and roll!
Did I listen to pop music because I was miserable? Or was I miserable because I listened to pop music?
Okay, so this is going to be a very, well, not very different, but a different kind of episode. I wanted to start something new inside the Music to My Peers umbrella, and I thought who better than Aaron, who's been on a couple times, and one of the things that works really well is I'm pretty sure, the last episode that you were on, we reviewed a couple older albums. Now, we did those against each other. That was Face to Face and Millencolin.
Yeah.
Specifically self-titled Face to Face and Millencolin's Penny Bridge Pioneers. But what I wanted to do, at least for this episode, and we'll see where we go from there, it may expand from that, is we're going to look at entire libraries, discographies, if you will, of some older bands. I mean, we'll see where it goes from there. But the first band that I don't know how we came and decided to go with this band as our first band, but it's what we're doing. We're going to look at and kind of, I guess, review and discuss the discography of Slick Shoes.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, real quick, Aaron, so at what point in the Slick Shoes timeline did you get into them? What was the record that was out when you got into them?
It was Rusty, so that was probably when I was like 12. We were on a family holiday in Vancouver, and anytime we went to a big city, we'd go to the Christian bookstore and check out all the sweet demos. So at that point, I was still mostly just listening to rock, but always kind of had that craving for more. I was always kind of fast forwarding the slow songs, and so the cover of Rusty stood out for some reason. So I remember putting it in and just immediately just being like, man, what is going on here? This is just something I couldn't have imagined. And it just changed my life. I just listened to it nonstop that whole trip.
I think for myself, it was, I want to say Burnout was the newest album that was out.
Okay.
Now, it's kind of hard for me to piece together necessarily because Rusty was the first one that I bought, but I believe Burnout was out because, the classic Tooth and Nail, like songs from the Penalty Box, samplers and stuff like that. That's how I would have heard Slick Shoes for the first time, and I'm pretty sure it would have been East on Tracks, is my guess. I don't remember exactly which compilation album that was on, but
that was Penalty Box 1.
Was it? Okay. So I don't think I'm trying to think if I actually owned that though, or if I would have just had friends, as you mentioned in youth group or whatever. So here's the thing. If you're listening to this and you're kind of unfamiliar with Slick Shoes, so they're a pop punk, skate punk band signed to Tooth and Nail Records, in the, I guess mid to late 90s initially. Yeah. And then eventually they found their way to Side One Dummy. Over the span of their career, I think only their final album was on Side One Dummy, but
just the last one.
So if you're new to the band, that's great. I want this to be an opportunity where we introduce you to some new music, but they are actually back together, I guess you could say. Not still together because they took some time off for a while, but they are back together. They released this. Have you listened to the song they released earlier this year?
Yeah, Hold Me Down or something. I was super bummed about it, to be honest. It just didn't really have anything that stood out to me.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't a bad song by any means. I've only listened to it one or two times, but that's my problem with singles, though, is I'm not the kind of person who just wants to listen to a song over and over again, like one song. If it pops up in the middle of an album, then I'm like, okay, I definitely will find it in its sequence or whatever. But for it to just be a standalone track, it didn't do anything that gave me a desire to go back to it. But maybe if it was on, if they release an EP or a full length in the future and it's on there, it might feel a little bit different. But let's dive in to Rusty then. So this is when you started listening to the band, and this is the first album that I bought, but it was not the newest at the time. So what are your thoughts, I guess, on Rusty?
Yeah, there's just so much good about this album. And there might have been a lot of, secular bands at this time kind of doing something like this, but I didn't know about those bands. So when I first heard this,
Right.
it just stood out to me as something just so out there and so much better than everything else I had heard. You know, just the speed of the album just stood out to me, and the amazing guitar work, you know, especially just for having one guitar player on that album, just
Yeah.
how well he was able to come up with lead guitar parts that fit well. It didn't sound empty. You know, the album, it's not like amazing production for then, but I think it fits in with that era. And
Yeah,
you
like
know,
it's. I was gonna say the production on the album's fine. Like it doesn't. There's I actually, without getting too far ahead, I think I like the production on Rusty better than on Burnout, if that means
interesting.
anything. But yeah, I've never. There are some bands, some records where those first couple records before they make that big leap sort of deal, which we talked about in the Millencolin Face to Face episode. It didn't, you know, it's not a record that feels that way for me where I'm like, oh, it is miles worse than, you know, what they would do in the future, because I think from one album to the next, they kind of always sounded different, like the same band, but the production for sure sounded different.
Yeah. No, the opening track is, hey everybody, Slick Shoes!
That's not how it goes at all.
Slick Shoes, are you crazy?
Sorry, I got a great idea, you guys.
Yeah.
Slick Shoes. That brings up a question. So have you ever watched The Goonies?
Oh, I definitely. But it was probably because of that, because of listening to that and seeing that. I was like, oh, what is this movie from? And then,
Yeah,
I need to
awesome
check out
movie.
The
Goonies. Yeah, it's easily one of my favorite. It's definitely one of my favorite kind of like family adventure sort of movies. It's
I love
up there
those.
for one of my all-time favorites, just to enjoy putting on and watching. But yeah, that intro is iconic to me, and it's in fact, I started the episode with that. This is me while recording, knowing already how I'm starting the episode before actually starting the episode. I'm like, that's a great way to introduce this episode. So,
that song is just, you know, as soon as I hear it, anytime, it just takes me back to that place. It just gets me pumped for that song.
yeah.
And
Well,
love
it's
it.
just like, and the way they kick the album off, like with that, it's just immediate, right? Like they got the little movie clip, and then immediately nothing, right? Like it's just like, just from the get go, they're like, this is what we're gonna do, and I think they do. It's fantastic, and as soon as that comes on, I will, again, without jumping too far ahead, I wanted to lay down a challenge, and maybe you can come up with something here, but I encourage you to find, especially on Tooth and Nail Records, a band that has a better first 3 albums that were all released on Tooth and Nail Records.
Yeah.
I challenge you or anyone listening to find that. Like, I don't think you're going to find a band that has, regardless, you know, of, we'll get into these later albums. Like, regardless of what you may think, I'm pretty confident saying their first 3 albums are possibly the strongest first 3 albums out of any Tooth and Nail band.
Oh, for sure. Even the first 2, like, you know, when I was listening to this and thinking of other punk bands on Tooth and Nail, like, there's lots that even the second one isn't nearly as good, or I shouldn't say nearly as good, but kind of shifted styles, or, you know.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm interested, I you know, like, kind of, this is the first episode, but I'm for sure, as being a kid who grew up big in Tooth and Nail, into Tooth and Nail bands, I'm interested in doing this with a couple of bands. There are a few on a list that I'm like, I would for sure go through and, you know, discuss some of these things. Maybe I'd be disgusted by it. I don't know. When coming back all these years later, but because with this particular episode here, I found that, you know, the last 2 Slick Shoes records I was not overly familiar with. Like, I had listened to both of them at some point, but so getting to sit down and listen to them intentionally was an interesting sort of exercise. So I'm interested in doing that with some other bands that, you know, in my mind fell off a little bit towards the end, and see what I think about them now. But we're still talking about Rusty. We don't want to get too. We've got what is it? 5 records to get through. So
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll stay focused on Rusty here for a minute.
Yeah, well, and it just kind of to make a note on that is, you know, or at least for myself, my musical taste kind of changed throughout their discography. So even though, you know, I was familiar with the last two albums, but I didn't get into them kind of the same as the first two. So they didn't have the same impact on me. But it's just kind of interesting, you know, when you have, you know, 4 or 5 or more albums, you know, typically your tastes have kind of changed a bit in there. So it's interesting to kind of hear how certain albums affected you at certain times of life. And
oh, for sure. And I mean, that's exactly, it's funny when I'm looking at it because like their last album, full length came out, was it 2003?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was just looking at that yesterday and thinking, man, it's already been 15 years since this album came out.
Yeah, but what blew my mind is I hadn't really changed directions yet as far as what I was listening to. Like that's the same year that, you know, Blink-182's Untitled or Self-Titled, I think they refer to it as their Untitled album, but that's the same year that came out, right? And I was still fully in. Like that was kind of, I guess, the start for me of the turn of listening less and less to pop punk and punk rock sort of stuff, and you know, maybe getting into more post-hardcore, melodic hardcore stuff like that.
Yeah,
you know, maybe a bit heavier bands, but it was still in that realm, considering, you know, that was the last record they released, which is pretty crazy to me. That was, I thought for sure it would have been like 2005, 2006, and I'd be like, well, that makes sense. By that point, I wasn't really listening to that kind of music anymore. But no, I was fully aware and actually saw these guys touring one of their last 2 records, which is funny.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I also thought there was more of a gap between the Self-Titled and Far From Nowhere, but it was only, I think, a year or 2 later. So
yeah, they were banging them out when it really boiled down to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I noticed that too when I looked back on the discography. Like I thought, well, there'd be, you know, at least a few years in between, but some of them was, you know, the next year for a number of them.
Yeah, yeah, and for sure. Like I don't know, you know, as far as what month they released, but I mean, like, so Rusty came out in '97, Burnout came out in '98, and then I think Wake Up Screaming was 2000, yeah, and then Self-Titled 2002, and then Far From Nowhere, the last one was 2003. So there were a couple times where they literally had less than 24 months between record releases, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know how much they were like touring back then. Like, you know, without as much internet, you didn't really know about tours and stuff unless you saw it in a magazine or whatever. So it'd be interesting to know, you know, within those album cycles, how many months were they on the road, or how much time did they have to write those albums? And
yeah, I'm curious as well. I'm trying to think back on how I would have heard about shows back then, because as you mentioned, like the internet wasn't really a thing.
Yeah,
you know, to just be like, nowadays it's like, oh, you know, sign up, log into bands in town, or just follow bands on, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, and you'll be inundated with, you know, tours, or follow specific promoters on Facebook and stuff, and you'll get notified when shows are happening. It's like, oh yeah. Versus back then, like, I'm amazed at some of the bands I saw back then, and I'm trying to think how I would have, like, the first time I saw Slick Shoes, like, how did I hear about that show? I'm not even sure how I heard about that show.
Yeah, maybe just like through posters. I guess if it was in your city, you could have seen around, but, you know, I grew up in a small town. We didn't, so
like I grew up in a small town outside Calgary, and I'm assuming what would have happened, because I know, like, the very first punk show that I went to, I saw a flyer for it at a Christian bookstore. I can't remember the bands right now. There's some like sweet like hardcore punk band though, where all I remember is like the bass player was the lead vocalist, and he would get down so far into like, you know, like the Ramones punk rock stance.
Oh yeah,
like where his legs are as far apart as possible. But then the microphone, he had it on like a boom stand or whatever, so it came up and then he angled it down, like, so he extended it as far as he could and kind of made it, you know, roughly as tall as he could, so that he would be underneath it screaming up towards the roof into the microphone. But I for sure saw, the reason I bring that show up is because that show happened at a venue called Soul Tattoo, which that's where eventually I saw Slick Shoes for the first time. So I'm wondering if maybe I saw a flyer, you know, at the same kind of Christian bookstore or whatever, because Soul Tattoo was like a small Christian venue.
Oh, okay.
Which eventually got shut down, you know, because kids dealing drugs behind it and all this kind of, you know, the good Christian stuff.
Yeah.
The good youth group kids dealing drugs behind the venue.
The first time I saw them, it was at a youth retreat at a college just outside of Winnipeg. So I would have heard of that from, a poster that came to our church or something. But other than that, like, you just didn't know about it unless you saw it in a magazine or something.
Sure. Yeah. Did you have any more thoughts on? I mean, we didn't really dive too deep into Rusty, but did you have any like standout thoughts? We'll get into like standout tracks specifically because we've each compiled a list of 15 songs. So we'll get into standout tracks in a little bit, but was there any kind of moments or things that you thought were interesting about this record when you kind of dove a little deeper?
Well, one of the main things is the age of the singer Ryan when he did this album. Like, I think when he joined, he was like 12 or 13 or something on the EP.
Yeah.
So this one, was he like 14 or 15? And
see, and that's what I was unsure of because I thought I heard that he joined the band when he was 14. But it could be that this first record came out when he was 14. I'm not sure, but I always knew he was young. And I remember being in high school thinking like, man, that's insane. Like, that is crazy that he is that young and, would be like touring and whatever, right? Like,
yeah. So I wonder what that dynamic was, when they were writing it and lyrics and stuff. And how does a 14-year-old come up with that much lyrical content and content that isn't, doesn't sound like it's coming from a teenager,
I mean,
there are moments.
Yeah, when I was looking back on it, listening to this, because I still love this record, and it holds a very special place in my like heart, in my like my musical journey or whatever. But when looking back on the lyrics at some points, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, like it definitely sounds like it's coming from a teenager. But it also got me thinking, like, what songs they play these days off that record when they're not playing a ton of shows. I do believe they actually have a live CD or like video sort of thing coming out. Yeah, they had recorded, I think, Chain Reaction in Anaheim.
Yeah.
Like, it was a while ago now, but I was like, in doing, I was like, oh yeah, reminded of that. But, I'm curious as to if there are songs that they wouldn't play anymore.
Yeah, I guess.
Because of, where... Like, lyrically, if he was like for instance, the song "Buy What Right," like I just wonder, like, does he still hold the same stance on some of those things? Because it's a pretty like straightforward song as far as where his beliefs were, and if any of those have changed or not, right? Like, I'd be interested to hear. But I thought about that in listening to this too, and going, were they lucky that his voice didn't change dramatically over the course of their career, right?
Yeah, like 2 years later, it's just super deep or just goes higher or just a whole album of his voice cracking. That would have been sweet.
Yeah, it would have been just capitalizing on, Kurt Cobain capitalized on, making his voice crack.
Yeah. There's one lyric that stands out that I remember. I can't remember what the song was, but where he says, "A girl is a wall that no one can climb." And so when I got into this album, my mom had, she was, really concerned about the music I was listening to and whatever. And
right.
And so she sat me down with this and was reading through the lyrics. And I could remember her specifically asking me what I thought that meant. I was like, I don't know, Mom. It's a punk song, like,
yeah,
whatever. I'm not paying that much attention, but I just found it funny that moment has stuck with me. That's kind of what stood out to her.
That's incredible.
About the album or whatever. So that's funny.
That's great. Oh man. So, all in all, this record is the one that I'll still go back to.
Yeah.
Even without being prompted, by an episode sort of thing, I will go back to this record because it's unbelievable. And I know we didn't know each other when this happened, but I do hold a little bit of a grudge that you used to own this on vinyl, right?
Sure did.
And then you just gave it away to a friend a friend of ours, even though I didn't know you at the time. But every time I go to his house and I see it, I'm just like,
man,
only.
Some of those were just because it was tooth and nail and it was on sale, and I would just buy it up. I never listened
like,
to it.
How old
once.
were you when you bought it?
Well, I don't know, like maybe 14 or 15 or something.
That's impressive that you were like just randomly buying vinyl because.
Well, I didn't yet. I think it was just one of those things that's like, oh, this is from that band that I love. I can't even remember the specific thought process by it. Like, I don't know why I didn't buy like T-shirts or something that I could have actually used. Or maybe I did, but to borrow my dad's credit card and whatever, and probably had to, phone it in, or maybe I had email then. But but I'm
that's
definitely
still amazing.
glad
I got to figure out a way
record.
to get it. I'm going to see if I can figure out a trade or something with him, but I doubt he would let go of it.
Well, maybe I'll
well.
just put a new term on that. 50% of the time you get it. Split custody.
Yeah, split custody. I like it. Okay, so was there anything else you wanted to say about Rusty before we move on to Burnout?
I'm interested what it did sales wise. Like back then, if there was just so many of these bands that it wasn't a big thing, or because in my mind, with a lot of these bands, I'm just like, oh, this band must have been huge. This album was amazing. But, then when I got into that space, as a band and kind of realized like, oh, okay, it's not really anything, you know.
Now, it's interesting because they were one of, kind of those tooth and nail bands that eventually broke out of, just being labeled a Christian band, I think. Obviously, they eventually signed to Side One Dummy, which I wonder how much, their relationship with MXPX had to play in that, because MXPX released an album on Side One Dummy, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they did. Panic. Yeah, as I was reading,
was that around the same time?
I can't remember the year on that. As I was reading the Slick Shoes Wikipedia, it just said that it didn't have anything to do with religious reasons. They had just, their contract was up and they wanted to move to something else. And so maybe MXPX had put that out by then. So through that connection, maybe.
That's what I'm wondering, is if there was, I feel like I'm just looking right now to see when Panic was released. Panic was released in 2005, so they would have gone over to Side One Dummy before MXPX.
Oh, maybe it was them.
So maybe it was maybe I would say maybe it was kind of the reverse sort of thing. But MXPX also, they had an EP out on Fat Records. They they kind of dabbled here, there, and everywhere. But they were. Having said that, they were one of those bands that did eventually kind of break out, and it was just their last album. Would have been interesting to see if they kind of kept going. Where if they'd signed more than a one album deal with Side One Dummy or whatever, but kept producing music, to see where it would have gone. But speaking of MXPX, one thing I noticed, especially on the first two records, if not just Rusty, how much there are specific points that remind me of Life in General. Which would have been, I think Life in General was 96. Is that when that one came out?
Yeah.
So right before kind of Rusty, wouldn't, obviously not surprised if it played an influence on them, and which is great. It's just kind of one of those things that adds to just how good that record really is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear that. Like maybe bands back then, because they would have been maybe a similar age and style, like maybe they weren't really influenced by other current bands in that scene. And
well, I think it was on their Wikipedia too. It listed, all the classics, Descendants, stuff like that. Which technically those are musically the two same bands, but listing those kind of classic influences. But MXPX lists them as well. I just wouldn't be surprised if hearing Life in General, and I didn't look at producers. I don't know who produced those records, if they were the same guy or not, because they don't I don't think they sound the same.
Yeah, like Steve Kravac, who produced Life in General, then produced Burnout. So maybe there might be a connection there. Maybe it was just Tooth and Nail saying, look what Steve did for MXPX and Life in General, and slowly going the way of the Buffalo. Let's see what he can do with you guys between Rusty and Burnout. Yeah,
which is interesting. Now, I meant to do this and I didn't, but I should go back and listen more closely. We're going to talk about Burnout now, but should go back and listen more closely to Burnout, because with Steve Kravac, I could hear, in listening to the early Dingies records, in listening to the Cooties Let's Play House record, there's a very specific drum sound on those records that sounds like Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo. And so I'm like, I meant to do that with Burnout, but I didn't get around to it. I forgot. Here's the thing, Burnout. Here are my, East on Tracks, I think, is the song, like I said, that I can pinpoint that kind of introduced me to Slick Shoes, and it's still one of my favorites. It's a song that I was never actually able to play on guitar, no matter how hard I tried. I know the riff, but it's just played so tight and so fast, and it's all palm muted that I'm like, I was never good enough. I was always a crappy guitar player, which is fine. You can get along playing punk rock being a crappy guitar player, but you can also be a really good guitar player and play punk rock really well. And I think that's what happened on this riff. It's so good, and it's so iconic for the band. I want to say that's probably potentially, one of the songs that when people think of Slick Shoes, maybe that's the one. I don't know. I would put my money on that. But I
for
think,
sure. Well, and that's the one that was on that Songs from the Penalty Box, and so I can still remember hearing that and just being. Are we going through the songs on Rusty here before we go to Burnout?
No, we'll do all the songs at the end. We'll list our songs, and then we can kind of look at it all as a whole. But so Burnout. The three things. One, the production was always speaking of it, it was always a little weird to me. I don't know why. I think it's just in the guitar tone. It sounded a little different. I don't dislike it. It just sounds unique. In fact, it sounds very much like this record has always reminded me of the Homecoming record by Craig's brother.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
And again, I should have looked to see who produced or engineered those records, because maybe it was Steve. I don't know.
I don't think Steve did Homecoming.
It's always sounded very similar to me for whatever reason. That's another band that was super tight and very talented very talented instrumentalist, period. But just sounded maybe a little bit too much like Lagwagon vocally.
Okay, yeah.
See, that's always been my thought. But I was always more into Craig's brother than Lagwagon, because I would have been, again, the whole youth group thing.
Yeah, I wasn't
tooth and nail artist, right?
Yeah.
But
see, I always loved the production on Burnout. Like I've seen comments about the snare drum, and you mentioned the guitar, but and again, maybe if I listened to it today as a new album, I'd have different thoughts. But it sounded so good to me back then that when I listened to it again this last week, I was just like, man, this album sounds so good.
Maybe what it boils down to for me, because the artwork on that album too, I've always kind of been like, well,
it's pretty bad.
I
used to think it was
iconic.
amazing, but yeah.
Yeah. I say, again, it's iconic, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I can't think of any other album that has artwork like that, but it's always made me feel like the whole overall vibe of the album was just like weighing down. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of like it's a, I mean, not dark in like, it's a dark imagery sort of thing. It's just a very dark cover.
Yeah.
And all I can think of when I'm listening, if I put headphones on and listen to that record, I just feel like I'm in a dark room listening to that record. It's this weird like connection that I've made with that record. And I don't, I know it's somehow it's the artwork and the production all working together. Maybe because to me, the production doesn't feel overly alive.
Okay.
It's just like, again, I don't put it on and go, oh, I can't stand this. I really like that record and it sounds fine. It's just this weird combination of things that I've always found. And but I still really like it. It's still super tight skate punk, pop punk sort of stuff, right? And it's really good. And I think it stands the test of time. Like when putting it on again, I will go back to it. I don't go back to it as much as Rusty, but I will go back to it. Oh, I wanted to say, sorry, back to Rusty briefly. This makes me laugh is that, so the first song on Rusty is called Feeble. Yeah. Right. But on Apple Music, they've actually typoed it and it's called Phoebe.
Weird.
So it's Feebie instead of Feeble.
Phoebe.
And I remember I sent a picture on Instagram at Apple Music one time. I was like, by the way, this song's not called Phoebe, but they don't care.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I wonder how many typos there are on songs on like Apple Music and Spotify and stuff that just get left behind.
Oh, yeah.
But Burnout anyways. So you like this record, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. It definitely does have a darker feeling. You say you feel like you're in a dark room, and there's just so many cool like chord progressions and darker chords. And what's interesting is he added a second guitar player on this album. Yeah. Which I was really excited about, back when you open the liner notes and you see this guy. But as I re-listened through the album, I noticed that there's not actually a whole ton of lead guitar parts. Like not nearly as much as Rusty. It's like I wonder what the thought was with that. It's like let's add a second guitar, but a lot of the time they're playing the same thing. There was lots of songs. It was like, man, I can just hear a sweet lead part here, but it's just chords.
Which is interesting because when we get into Wake Up Screaming, that was one of my notes, but opposite.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about Burnout though, because like It is weird because it just feels like, I don't know if their focus was like, we just want to make fast music. Let's just make fast music. And
Yeah, it could have been.
the second guitar part, or not guitar part, but second guitar player. I mean, I guess you could make the argument it'll make them sound bigger live.
Yeah.
But yeah, was that Dale Yob that joined them?
Yeah, who also played in the Cooties.
I was gonna say, speaking of the Cooties, so yeah, you could be right. I didn't notice a ton of lead guitar parts on Rusty either, though.
Yeah, well, not necessarily lead guitar.
Joe's Sick has a guitar solo in it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like those first two albums, I found like it was just like, let's play if I could speak, tight, fast punk rock, and yeah. But it is interesting to add a second guitar player and not really utilize that guy too much. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm guessing that Steve Kravac, again, back to him, because I've listened to a number of podcasts with him, and I know when MXPX went with him, he was really kind of pushing like to simplify, like, again, make it really tight, but kind of keep it simple. And so I wonder if that was a part of going from Rusty to that, if he was kind of like, too many guitar parts.
I'd heard the same thing in regards to the Dingies.
Yeah.
How he really simplified what they were doing. I think it was might have been the labeled episode about Ethan Luck.
Yeah, it could
or
have
with
been.
Ethan Luck that he talked about how he really wanted to simplify. Specifically, he was talking about drums because Ethan Luck played drums on that record. But he was talking about simplifying that, and it's that very well could be a thing. I don't know how that record was written, right? Like if they wrote a number of the songs like kind of in sessions in prep for the album, or if they just kind of naturally wrote them, like if Steve had a hand sort of in any of that, or if it was just like when if they had lead guitar parts written, and then he was just kind of like, meh, don't worry about that, right? Like, really, Steve's just trying to like save time. He's like, nah, we don't want to go, even though those are two pretty talented guitar players, we don't want to go through that. We'll just leave it be.
Yeah, and I wonder how Jackson felt, because so I guess there's not a lot of leads on Rusty, but a lot of the guitar parts aren't just, the progressions aren't just simple power chords, like he's doing kind of a lot on there. So yeah, I wonder if, he was kind of bummed about, if he did have more parts to put in and kind of was told to simplify it, or who knows?
It's possible, yeah. I don't know, but I would be interested in finding that out if that's the thing. Their Wikipedia page didn't really give a ton of information.
It doesn't have much.
I was disappointed, and because I was like, okay, they've been around for a while, obviously. Like, maybe there'll be some good stuff. No, there's not really a whole. I could have done some digging for like old interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, but I do feel that Burnout, it has a good flow to it, like, so maybe that kind of helped too, is simplifying things just kind of from song to song. Like you have a song like East on Tracks where it's got that sweet part, but then the rest of the song is kind of pretty straightforward guitar wise, and it kind of helps to break it up a bit, because Rusty, when I listen to it, I love it, but it's a pretty busy album.
Right.
And so I could see how going into the next one, kind of hone in on their sound and just making it a really smooth record.
Yeah. The flow from start to finish is pretty good. And that's something that I feel like for those first three records for sure, Slick Shoes were really good at.
Yeah.
They were really good at kind of like pacing and sequencing records. And I don't know if you had any more notes on Burnout or not, because that's a segue into something that I wanted to talk about with Wake Up Screaming. But before we move on, is there anything that stands out or that you wanted to mention that you didn't mention yet about that record, about Burnout?
Just another note on that. I thought Burnout was a lot more dynamic. Rusty is pretty straight up, just fast the whole time. Like there's a few songs that break up, but I thought that Burnout kind of brought a few different variations of tempos and dynamic, and so that made that record really stand out for me as well.
Yeah. So Wake Up Screaming, I feel like this might be where we kind of potentially diverge paths.
Yeah.
So the sequencing on Wake Up Screaming is something that I really like, because there's a couple instances, and I can't remember if they both ended up on my picks of songs or if I had to kind of choose one over the other. But there's a couple instances where one song literally goes straight into the next song.
Okay.
And if I wasn't paying attention, I never noticed that it was two different songs. But anyway, so they do that. The only thing, the only thing I don't really like about Wake Up Screaming is the final track. I don't understand its purpose. It's so dumb.
I can't.
It's just that instrument.
Which one?
It's just
is
like
that?
an instrumental. I don't know. I don't remember what it's called, but it's just like a little instrumental, like rock song. Bum, bum, bum,
Oh yeah.
bum,
Like noise.
da-da-da.
Isn't that like a riff from like Rock and Roll 8 Noise Pollution or something?
Maybe, yeah.
AC/DC
I don't know,
song
but-
or something.
Or was that like? I'm trying to think if that's actually a bonus track. I'm just like trying to listen on my phone right now. What? Yeah, okay, so it's a bonus track, but there's like no time
Okay.
between the last track and that bonus track.
Okay,
like, so it's
yeah.
not originally listed. Originally, the last song is not that far, which is fine then. But there's no like dead space or anything between the last two tracks, so it just feels like, oh, that's their outro that they went with,
Yeah.
and I can't stand it. It was so dumb. Like, you should have just left that off of there.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's get into this one because, like I said, I think we're going to go different directions on this one.
Yeah, well, my first note is huge change from the first two albums.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing a big part of that.
Also, more member changes.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that was a big part of it. Like you lose your founding guitar player. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
I think they even got two new guitar players on that album because I don't think Dale was in that one either.
So. Yeah.
And so I'm sure that was a big change. So yeah, I'd be curious to know if it was, just those players coming in and just different styles, or if they
Right.
intentionally, kind of lightened up on things. Like it's definitely a lot more of a lighter record than, coming from Burnout for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree that it's lighter necessarily. Like it definitely has some poppier elements. There are some songs where, it goes straight into more pop punk. In fact, there's a song on here that made me it's the one I can't remember the title of it right now, but it's like bam ba ba bam ba.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was like driving around listening to it in my car because this is the only physical CD I own now of Slick Shoes.
Oh, okay.
I used to own the first three, and then at one point I sold them all to buy a used pool table when I was living with my old roommates.
Worst decision ever.
And yeah, right. There's so many of them. Like, why? But so this one I actually found at a thrift store not that long ago. I was like, oh, I really liked this album. And so I was driving around listening to that, and then when that song came on, it made me put on Newfound Glory because it reminded me a lot of Newfound Glory.
And see, a riff like that to me is just not nearly as good as so many of the ones on Burnout. I don't even know if I consider that a riff. Like,
Nah, I mean it's just a chord progression. That's I don't know. I like it. It's not my favorite song on the record by any means, but much like on this record, much like on the first two records, I like when they would kind of lean into a little, some of those hardcore influences.
Oh man, it's my favorite.
Yeah, and so those a lot of the times would end up being songs that I would gravitate towards, and they always seem to be towards the end of the record.
Yeah, that's true.
Within the last few songs, but so I definitely they do that on here at one point or another, and the one thing that I really enjoyed listening to with this one is you talk about on Burnout they had two guitar players, and there wasn't really any lead guitar sort of stuff.
Yeah.
On this record, again, they have two guitar players. I don't remember. One guy's name is Greg. I can't remember the
Greg
other guy's name.
Tagawa, and then I can't remember.
Yeah. So on this record, though, what I really appreciate is that they've hard panned the guitar parts.
Okay.
So
I didn't
I don't know
notice that.
who's who, but one is hard panned left and the other is hard panned right. So if you're listening, a lot of the time they're not playing the exact same things.
Okay.
Which is really awesome. I really enjoyed listening and hearing, the different pieces come and go on this record. And I think that made me kind of get into it a little bit more because when I first bought this, at the thrift store and I put it back in, I was kind of like, it doesn't really stand up to me the way it used to.
Yeah.
But when I was listening through it this time, I don't know if it was because I was like making myself listen and then picking up on these things and then kind of feeling that come back, like enjoying it. I really started to enjoy it again. And this is so this record was the one that I first saw them touring.
Okay.
it was for this album. And actually the opening band on that tour was a band called Cooter, who then changed their name to Autopilot Off.
Actually, those two bands played in Brandon, Manitoba. I didn't get to go to, my buddies went, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And so like it was funny, like quick side story I met like I think it was the bass player from eventually Autopilot Off after that show, and we were talking and I was like, man, really enjoyed your guys' set, blah 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 blah. And he's just like, they I guess had signed a crappy deal with do you remember the label Fast Music?
No.
It was
really.
like I feel like it was this short-lived label that came out of like an internet website sort of deal.
Okay.
But they had signed to that label, and he was like, "Yeah, just go steal our record," because they were so
Just
upset
ticked about it.
with. Yeah, there was something that went wrong, that went sideways with that. Obviously, they ended up changing their name to Autopilot Off down the road, and they had some all right success in the early 2000s pop punk scene. They ended up on some movie soundtracks and stuff.
I love that album so much.
That first one?
Autopilot Off, Change of Sound. Or, not Change of Sound, that's Strike Anywhere. Oh, no, I can't remember what
So
it's called,
close.
but anyways, I love that album.
Yeah. So like the first one that they were touring that I owned, what they were under the name Cooter, and I can't remember the name of the album, but it had like, like the classic where you take a picture, keep the shutter open for a couple seconds when like cars are driving by, so like the tail lights. Yeah,
I can picture
so it. Was
it.
that was the cover. Eventually they changed their name and re-released it under Autopilot Off, but I always had that Cooter one. Now I don't have it because again I probably sold it when I sold all my other CDs.
Yeah. Well, and those two bands did a split too.
Yeah, that's right. I'm assuming for that tour or after the tour or something. I don't remember, but so I mean, like, I ended up coming back to this record and really liking it. I think maybe because you talked about like the dynamic on Burnout, being more dynamic than Rusty. I think this record's even more dynamic still.
Interesting.
And I think it's just like maybe in the like pace changes, like tempo changes. And kind of like different vibe changes from time to time. And then the fact, like I said, there's a couple songs where they sequence right into each other. And plus it has another iconic intro.
Yeah.
Glory, glory, hallelujah.
I remember thinking that was so cool back then. Now it's kind of annoying.
And then like the scream.
Yeah.
Oh, and here's a little story about this record. I remember when you opened it up, there was a picture on the inside of the band, and like, I want to say one of the members is like screaming in Ryan's ear.
Yeah.
And then they're all just kind of standing. But I think it was Greg Tagawa. He had like, it's either him or Ryan, had 4 ear piercings and they were all hoops.
Okay.
And I wanted, so like after I bought that record for my 16th birthday, my mom was like, hey, I'm going to take you to get your ears pierced, which is a weird birthday gift.
Yeah, man.
But I immediately went all in and got 4 piercings.
Man.
Dang, 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 dang. And it was like, but I never actually got into the hoops because I couldn't stretch my ears enough to get good hoops in there. So I just had studs for years.
Nice.
And now I don't have anything because eventually I lost studs. And
that's kind of an
it is what it is.
Interesting like side note about this era of bands is just how influenced, at least I was, on looking at band pictures and just be like, oh man, like those guys are just dressed so cool. That's what I used for my fashion sense, was band pictures and stuff.
Wore Dickies all day in either Vans or Converse.
Yeah.
Like it was like,
shopped at Value Village for, like random companies' shirts. And
I still do that though.
Oh, me too.
I'm wearing a shirt from Value Village right now.
Man, love it.
And I'm still wearing Vans. The only thing that's changed is I'm not wearing Dickies.
You know what? I got a pair of sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but I got a pair. I was in my friend's wedding 12 years ago. And we wore black Dickies shorts and black Dickies like button-up like work shirts. I've worn those shorts every summer for the last 12 years, and they're still still amazing. They're just worn in just perfectly, and so shout out to Dickies.
I don't think I could wear anything that I wore 12 years ago. I don't think they'll fit.
yeah, that's true.
I grew a little in that time, but so. Thoughts on Wake Up Screaming? I know obviously you're not as big into it as the first 2 records.
Yeah, and it might have just been a culmination or combination, whatever word is appropriate for that, of kind of, it didn't seem overly inspired, or it didn't kind of give me the same emotions as previous albums. And at that time I was probably getting into heavier music, and so it just didn't kind of stand out as much. So as I re-listened to it, I kind of had some of those same thoughts of like, yeah, this is okay, but this is probably my least favorite album of theirs kind of overall.
Right.
Like it's still, if I listen to it, I still enjoy it, but it's definitely not going to be one that I revisit very often.
But I do challenge you to find a tooth and nail artist that had a better first 3 records.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with
Like
that.
even like some of the heavy hitters, you know, like MXPX. Well, I mean, you're gonna like Poconacha, you're gonna really throw out the window. Teenage Politics is okay. You know, I like Teenage Politics, but it's definitely a little more nostalgic. Then, I mean, they really hit their stride. Obviously, Life in General, Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo, that kind of stuff. But for like first 3 records, I mean, maybe the Supertones might be knocking on that
they've
door.
had some great ones too.
But I mean, I was never a huge ska fan, but I would definitely say that like that first Supertones record is fun, but it still doesn't compare to Rusty, you know?
Oh no, it sounds horrible. That
it really does. It really does.
Yeah. Although I love Supertone, Strike Back, and Chase the Sun. Those are great albums.
Yeah. Okay, so we want to kind of move forward because we're getting a little long here. So you say that Wake Up Screaming felt a little uninspired to you. That's exactly how I describe the self-titled record. This is the first record outside of, you know, like Wake Up Screaming and maybe like that secret track, that we were talking about, the instrumental thing.
Yeah.
This is the first record that actually has a song that I will skip every single time on it.
Okay.
Can you guess what song it is?
No, I can't think of it off the top of my head. Oh, Friday Night?
Yes.
Okay.
I cannot stand that. So my biggest problem with this record is they were knocking on the door of doing something cool production wise, and then I think they blew it. Because it sounds to me like this is the first record maybe that Ryan is double tracked, and I really like it. But then they kind of bury his vocals in the mix, and the music like just doesn't sound. It's not doing anything for me that warrants a burial of the vocals behind the music. You know, if the guitars were doing something interesting, I could maybe get behind it a little bit, but they're just not. And so I just kind of like hear this record and I kind of go, I just feel blah listening to it. There are some songs that I was able to kind of pick out of it. But yeah, for sure, this record, I was struggling.
Yeah, I wonder, I couldn't find who produced Wake Up Screaming or this one. Like, I don't know if it was similar.
Yeah, we'd have to go back and check liner notes from actual albums.
Yeah. I don't know if I have either of those on a hard copy, but and then like did they get new guitar players again this one or was it still the same guys or what?
Well, I mean Greg's not in the band for sure. I don't know because I don't remember who joined, but if you look at their list of members, I believe this might be where Jonah joins and he is still in the band.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, cuz now I think Jackson's back in the band now.
Yeah, I mean, they're not really doing it that full time, so I guess they can all come back and just play shows here and there.
Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't show Jonah being in the band. Who's Jonah? Yeah, Jonah Peterson. Although I think maybe he's not anymore, but I think when they first reunited, he was in the band. Are they on Fueled by Ramen right now?
I don't think they're signed to anything. I saw that on there, and I don't know what... I thought maybe that was the split with Cooter or something.
Possible. Was Fueled by Ramen around then? I don't know. Maybe. But because Joe's back in the band. Joe Nixon.
Did he ever leave?
Oh, wait, hold on.
I think him and Ryan were always there.
Or is it him and Jeremiah who were always? Anyways.
Yeah, Jackson and Jeremiah had left and then came back kind of to play here and there. So.
But anyway. I believe this is maybe where Jonah joins the band because I saw them again. I don't know if it was touring this record or if it was touring the next record because I saw them twice within a short amount of time because they came through and then they played Warp Tour that year as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so, which was when I think they signed a Side One Dummy. So I'm not sure if it happened in between there or what. But yeah, so I don't know. This record I just wasn't big on. And
yeah, I kind of lump it in with Wake Up Screaming. Like it's both, you know, as I listened to this, I was like, there's enough tracks that do stand out, but again, nothing, nothing the same as the first two by any means.
And see, like maybe Wake Up Screaming came along at a time, because what did we decide? That was released in 2000. And so like that was like I would have been in grade 10 or 11 when that came out, and so it was like a peak album for me. You know, it came out shortly after like Enema of the State. It came, you know, there was a bunch of stuff that came out, and it was right in there. But maybe by the time Slick Shoes, like the self-titled, came out, I was sort of. I think that's maybe where I lost a little bit of interest in them, because then I did not like. I think I breezed through Far From Nowhere at some point, but I for sure enjoyed Far From Nowhere way more than the self-titled.
Oh yeah.
record.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like they get back a little bit to, you know, kind of that, a little more of the skate punk, a little less of the pop punk. Still a mix, but just a little more, I think.
Yeah, well, what stands out the most on the self-titled is that's when they were, like I'd go, you know, all these bands' websites at school when I had, you know, a spare at the library. And they had this website that was in progress for what felt like eternity.
Yeah.
But they had these like little animated like stick figures like on stage, and then a bunch kind of watching.
Yeah.
And they had a clip from one of the songs playing, and I remember being like super stoked on that clip. And so I do like that song, but that's kind of what stood out the most about that album.
Right. Yeah.
I can't really remember like how much I listened to it back then or whatever,
Yeah.
but so it's got its ups and downs, but again, nothing gets me like super stoked about it necessarily.
Yeah, no, it's one that I likely won't go back to. Whereas if we move on to Far From Nowhere, I found myself wanting to go back to this record. At first, I was like Darko is okay as an opener. I was kind of like and like I remembered that song. I don't know if I like why specifically that song stood out. I think they may have a video for it.
Okay.
But then listening to the rest of the record, I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Oh,
I
man.
can
love
get into
it.
this. Yeah, it's quite it's a nice return, considering, you know, like for me with self-titled, I was kind of I had written them off, and you know, like to go back now years later and listen to what followed up, I'm like, okay, it's not at the same level as those first two to three records for me, but it's a like if I removed self-titled, like if that wasn't a thing,
right?
You know, those 4 records, I'd be like, that is a solid discography. That is a solid, you know, punk rock, pop punk, whatever, skate punk discography I can get behind.
Yeah, and there's like, you
It's
know,
got the
again,
one blip though.
They had some. Well, they must have got another new guitar player on this one, but there's there's significantly better guitar leads, and
Right.
I mean, the album sounds amazing, and what's interesting about this one is they went with a producer on, a guy named Ed Stasium, I think.
Okay.
So I was looking him up on Wikipedia, and the only band I really recognized was he'd done like a whole bunch of the Ramones records. So he's an older guy. Like the picture, he looked like he was like 70 or something.
Crazy. Yeah,
so it was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, I wonder what made them go to a guy like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a little, I want to say it's their rawest sounding album, production wise.
Yeah.
Because I think those first 2 records sounded pretty tight production wise. Like, I know you pointed out like the production on Rusty, but to me, it's always been like one that flows fine. Whereas this one, I feel like the guitars sound a little rawer, the drums sound a little dirtier. I mean, it's just maybe them getting older, right? Like, I will say this about Slick Shoes. I'm glad they did not go the way of bands like Goaty Hook. Because like Goaty Hook,
like kind of the rock side of stuff.
Yeah, like that. I mean, and maybe that might be another band that we look at and go back and listen to. Because when they made that turn, I'm glad that Slick Shoes never kind of made that turn where they're like, we're getting older, guys, you know. But
we gotta mature and get lame.
So we're getting a little long on this episode. So let's get down to the tracks. We each kind of made a 15. It's supposed to be 15 songs. A 15 song playlist sort of deal, and a minimum of 2 songs from each record. So let's go through record by record. So what did you have off of Rusty?
For Rusty, I got Feeble, or Phoebe, as iTunes likes to call it. Just because just the memory of just first hearing that, and it just always takes me back to that place. And it's just a great opening song, you know. It kind of goes to that halftime for that. You know, do you remember when we went walking hand in hand?
Yeah.
So it kind of, you know, to
Turns
end it
like a swing kind of there.
Yeah. So did you have that song?
I
or
did.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. What are your thoughts on that one?
Again, I love. It's a fantastic opener. and it's got an iconic sort of, clip off the start, and it just really like blasts from the get-go, and it's one that I can sing along to pretty much word for word for the most part. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to throw that one on there.
Yeah. My second one is Rusty. So that one, again, with the memory tied to it, it was on, I don't know if you remember Truth videos. It was like skateboarding, surfing kind of videos.
I was thinking about these not long ago. I'm wondering if these are the same ones, because that was, I remember hearing some old school Dogwood on one of those as well.
Yeah, it could have been.
Yeah.
So there was a song, the song Rusty was on snowboarding or something. And me and my buddy would just always watch that. And I just thought that song kind of stood out. It's a bit more diverse and different than some of the other songs. It's got some cool parts in it. And then my other one is a mix of Father-Son Picnic and Tired of You.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned with the other albums, I love when they kind of go into that, melodic hardcore realm.
Yeah.
And so these songs, just that guitar part in the beginning of Father-Son Picnic, I remember always just standing out to me. And I love those ones.
So I ended up with 2 different songs after that. I'm assuming, did you just have the 3 on there, or do you have more?
Yeah, just those 3.
Okay, so I ended up, after Feeble, I had Joe's Sick, because
it's a classic one.
I've always liked how tight the drums are with the palm muted guitar at the beginning. And then I always loved the video where they got like break dancers and stuff. So random.
Yeah,
and
in the
they're playing in the garage.
Old Tooth and Nail videos.
And then much like you, like kind of getting in touch with those hardcore influences, I had Buy What's Right. I've always enjoyed that song. A little harder edge for them. And yeah, it always comes out. And Father-Son Picnic was one I was debating, and then I went with Buy What's Right instead. So what about?
Well, good, because that was another one I had, and I was like, maybe I like Father-Son Picnic. So
what about Burnout? What do you have off Burnout?
Obviously, I've got East on Tracks as the first one, because I just remember first hearing that, and that's kind of when I started playing guitar too, and of course, probably wasn't able to pull that off, and but just printing off tabs and trying to do it, and even just getting close to it was like, oh man, like I almost got this.
Yeah. Once the pick scrape comes in, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
I also have East on Track, so yeah.
My second one is When Does It End?
Okay.
It's kind of got kind of a cool hardcore feel to start it, and awesome singing verse, and just good chunky guitar parts, and so that was another one that really stood out.
So did you just have the 2 or 3 on there?
I've got East on Tracks, When Does It End, and then the last one, Learn to Unlearn, which is kind of 2 songs in one. Like it goes into, it's that fast, again, kind of hardcore sounding song, and then it kind of stops for a second and does that snare hit where it goes like which is actually a re-recorded song. So there's 2. There's one song, Wake Up Screaming, that I'll talk about, and then the second part of this last song were both re-records from the EP, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Right.
I don't know if you picked up on that or not, but
well, I knew the first song on the EP, is it Silence? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that one I was like, wait, okay, I know this song, and then I was like, is it somewhere? So I was looking for Silence on the other records, but I was like, I don't know what it is. But anyway, so for myself, again, getting into the harder sort of side, I had Clench Fists, Black Eyes.
Oh man, I love that one.
Also
so
had
much.
East on Tracks, and then Late Night Showing was my other song on the list. So let's move on to Wake Up Screaming.
Yeah, so again with this album, like there wasn't necessarily ones where I was like, these are my go-to ones. So kind of as I re-listened through it, I kind of had to pick out ones. So I have I Said Too Much?
Yep. Which I also
This
have.
Is Your Life.
Yep.
Kind of, a harder feeling song. And then that song, I Guess, which was the re-recorded one from from the first one. And I just love that guitar. That's just that.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love about Slick Shoes is like the quick palm muting sort of things they throw.
It gets me every time.
I actually have 4 songs from this record. So I have I Said Too Much and This Is Your Life. But then I'm not a huge huge fan of the song Angel, but I have it on here simply because of the way it goes into, like, just bleeds straight into Peace of Mind, and I like Peace of Mind. And so how those 2 tracks go together it's one of those sequencing things I was talking about. It happens later on the album as well, if I recall. But yeah, it was. I dig those two songs. So self-titled. What do you have from that record?
I've got the opening track, My Ignorance.
Okay.
I think that's a really good opening track, and I really like that one. No More Words. So that's the song that was on the website.
Oh, okay.
So I had to pick that one, and it starts with that cool palm muting. I can't hear it in my head right now, but I'm always a sucker for a song that starts with palm muting. And then 151, which is I think towards later in the album.
Yeah.
I just love the opening riff and the vocal harmonies, and great album closer.
So this record, I just kind of picked two songs that I was okay with. 10 Ways and So Much More were kind of like, I could not really get into this record. So chances are when I present a list to Jordan, I'm going to take your songs that you put a little more thought in. Because this one I was like, I mean, I guess I don't mind this song and I don't mind this song, so this will work for me. But yeah, that's kind of where I was with that one. Now, finally, Far From Nowhere. What are your songs off that one?
My first one is Now's the Time. I'm not sure if they had a video for that one, but I just love that opening riff where it's like and then there's like a lead guitar part comes in, and so I love that. Hope Against Hope, which so that song I think was originally on the Cooter split.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And so again, re-recording kind of an old one.
Yeah.
And again, just it's got that kind of hardcore feel to it. Great chorus, and it's kind of all the things in a Slick Shoe song that I like. And then I got Hello Stupid, which is just a really, really catchy song. Yeah. And I can't picture what it is in my head, but I really like that one. And then then the last one I had was Downhill. Okay. I don't have any notes for that one, but just another song that stood out.
So I also have Hope Against Hope. And then I also had Once Again, and I don't know if I'll say this right. Carpinteria? Carpinteria? I don't know how to say it. But yeah, no, those are... I enjoyed that last record, and in the end it was just kind of like, oh yeah, no, this will work. Hope Against Hope was, I think, when I was first listening to that record, the first song that kind of like really perked my ear. I was like, whoa, this is, and then get excited to go back and listen and kind of dive in a little bit more. But so I'm going to present these songs, some of these songs anyways. I'm not going to make them listen to 25 songs. That's a little unreasonable. But I'm gonna present these to Jordan, who, of course, if this is the first episode you're listening to, congratulations on making it this far. But I'm going to I normally have another co-host that we kind of do newer music reviews with and stuff. So Aaron's going to be my guy for, we're going to do some older stuff and maybe even some like discussions that aren't specifically about albums, but other music topics. And then Jordan is the guy who I do kind of shorter reviews with. I'm going to present him with a list of Slick Shoe songs, and literally in a few seconds or minutes, whatever, you're going to hear his reactions through the magic of, stuff. That's technology. That's the word I'm looking for. But real quickly, I'm going to throw out some social media sort of stuff. You can find us on Facebook. I think it's facebook.com/Music to My Peers podcast. Just look up Music to My Peers. It'll get you there. I'm on Instagram at David to My Peers. We're also at musicpeers.blogspot.com. Aaron, are you out there in the internet world at all?
I am floating on the Wi-Fi wherever you need me.
Floating on the Wi-Fi. Surfing the waves of the web.
AW Friesen, but that might soon be changing to Aaron to My Peers. So check that out if you like.
I give you full permission. I know you're like, I said you should do it. Then you're like, I was actually going to ask. I'm like, yep, full permission. Go ahead. So if you don't find him under AW Friesen, look up Aaron to My Peers. And then, because he's been on the show enough that I think he's officially a part of the family. He's officially a peer. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but
I'm the creepy second cousin
who likes to dance too close at the big family get-togethers. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but I always bring a good time, so it's always worth having me there.
That's awesome. So, yeah, that's gonna do it for our recap of the Slick Shoes discography. If you've got bands that you think we should look at, either entire discographies or if they've been around forever and have released 20 albums, like specific eras of their time, hit us up. I'd be down for that on any of those social media sites. You can do that. Also, like musicpeers.blogspot.com. I would love it if that became a place where we started having conversations, because there's posts about each episode and you can comment at the bottom, and it would be fun to do. I don't know if people ever do. You, I think, are the only one who's ever done that.
Sweet.
Back when you first started listening, you commented. Yeah. I was like, who is this guy? But yeah, so that's going to do it for this. We're going to do this again. Like I said, if you made it this far, congratulations. You are incredibly awesome. And yeah, we'll do this again soon. Boom!
Hi.
Hey, so put you to work, son. Gave you some
you gave
extra
me a task.
Homework. Yeah. So this is your reaction to Slick Shoes.
A band I've never heard of.
Yeah. So have you never even heard of them?
Never heard of them.
So, I mean, obviously this is tacked on at the end of another episode, but Slick Shoes, one of the first kind of like punk bands I can really remember getting into. One of the first ones I saw live, for sure. That was like a touring band, going back to the 1990s, late 90s, but
yeah.
Or maybe even early 2000s by that point. I'm not sure. Anyway, I gave you a playlist of songs that was kind of constructed by myself and Aaron. Let's talk about it real quick.
Yeah. So give me some context. Are these your favorite songs from all these albums?
Sort of like that. So yeah, we put together this playlist by he picked 15 songs. I picked 15 songs. There had to be a minimum. They had 5 full lengths. There had to be a minimum of 2 songs from each album. And so some of them are my favorites. Some of them are his favorites.
Okay.
Some of them were agreed upon.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So.
And they went, your playlist, if I recall, I'm just going to double check.
Do they go in order?
Yes. They are in order that they were released.
Yeah.
So you're early on to the end of time.
Yeah. Are they still together?
They're back together.
Ah.
Yeah, so they, like, because the last album, if you notice, was released in like 2003, I think.
Yeah.
But they do have a single that they released this past year or last year or something like that. And they recently reformed and they're supposed to have a live album coming out, or live DVD, one or the other. They filmed it. They recorded it, I think.
Oh,
so
cool.
who knows when that comes out. But
all right. Well, my initial reactions is it's a fun band. It's a fun band.
Yeah.
The first couple songs, which obviously I guess would be their oldest songs,
Yeah.
sound very early Blink to me.
Okay, interesting.
And I was, which I'm always down for.
yeah.
And
Like
then,
when you say early Blink, are you talking like Cheshire Cat Blink?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like it sounds like really old school punk
Right.
rock
Yeah,
music,
like pop punk, yeah.
which is kind of I guess would have been happening around the same time. And then it all works for me. It's very fast. It's very catchy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's a ton of depth to it,
Yeah.
but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I
in
look at
my
this
opinion.
playlist and I realized I gave you 16 songs, not 15, because there's 4
Okay, you
from one
tacked
album.
on.
Well, there's 4 from one album on there, but 2 of them actually flow into each other, so I kind of included them together. But anyway, so fun, fast.
Yeah, and so just kind of like working my way through it. I was just listening to it as I worked on stuff, but I could even tell like from album to album, I was like, oh, this sounds a little different. It sounds
Right.
more like earlier 2000s or
Right.
late,
Yeah.
right? And so, good band. I mean, I can't say it's life-changing music for
No.
me, but
Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed it. I have nothing bad to say about
If
it.
Slick
at all.
Shoes came out with a new album, would you check them out?
I would check it out for sure.
Oh, excellent.
For sure. Yeah.
Because like this was our kind of quick thoughts is, I mean, my favorite album by Slick Shoes, the first 3 songs would come off it, their first album, which I compared to, and knowing that you're not overly familiar with MXPX. I mean, we've
not
reviewed
really,
a couple
yeah.
albums, but the first MXPX album we reviewed was Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo, which would have been released kind of like shortly after this one, but I compared Rusty to Life in General, which was the album from MXPX right before Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo, which we'll have to cover. Like, we got to talk about that
Yeah,
sometime because it's fantastic. But yeah, like that's my favorite record. But they definitely kind of get popular the album Wake Up Screaming, which is the one where the little boy's sitting up in bed screaming.
Yeah.
Obviously. That, I would say, that and the self-titled right after that, where they're too poppiest, because they kind of feel like they got back a little bit to more of the skate punk, faster sort of stuff with their final Far From Nowhere, unless they obviously release a new album anytime soon. But yeah, so I'm
Yeah, no, I liked it. I have no bad reviews for any of the albums.
Did you have a song that stood out from that playlist?
I don't know. Like the only ones that really stood out to me were the first 3 off their earlier album, because it just reminded me so much of that old school pop punk kind of Blink feel to it, and I was like, I like this.
Can you guess where these guys are from?
They're American.
Obviously, yeah.
Well, then are they from San Diego?
Not quite.
From California?
Yeah, I believe they're from Orange County. So they're from the hub of.
Okay, so they're in that.
They were
world,
right in
man.
the middle of it. Yeah, they were right in the mix of it. So
yeah, makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. But there you go. So just spreading the Slick Shoes love.
I like it. Yeah. And
by the way, have you ever seen the movie The Goonies?
No,
because that's where they're named. So that clip at the very beginning, I got a great idea, you guys.
Okay.
Slick
I was
Shoes.
wondering what
comes
that was
the
from.
Goonies. Your next set of homework is to go watch The Goonies.
I think you've told me that before too. I've never
Probably.
seen it. Never seen it.
I'll lend it to you. I have it on DVD somewhere. My kids have seen that movie, so you should get on that. But
all right,
there you go, man. Jordan likes Slick Shoes.
I like it.